I know the question a lot of people want to know, and so I'm just going to ask. I heard Angelina Jolie, she once said she never says anything important in like the first 2 minutes of a press appearance because no one's paying attention. They're all just like, wow, it's Angelina Jolie, and no one's listening to what she's saying. I think that's the same thing when you have Olympic gold medalists. So let's just like, before we get to like, we're going to talk about coaching and relationships and how this relates to the work that you all do in the work of Bar. Let's just start though. I mean, you guys are gold medalists, silver medalists. You've competed at the absolute pinnacle of your sport. Like, talk about what it was like this year in China, what it was like in Korea. What's it like to do what you do?
Well, I'm no Angelina Jolie, but I guess I'll answer that one. So, yeah, this experience in China was much different than in 2018 in South Korea with the COVID-19 restrictions we had. So, preparing for this one was a little different, going over there knowing your parents weren't going to be there, you weren't going to have the energy coming from the stands, and so that was something we talked a lot about, creating our own energy, being there for each other as teammates, and we kind of, one of the things our team always says is at the end of the day, it's a hockey tournament, and you've been playing hockey your entire life, so that's kind of how we approach it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing too is it was hard to get out to watch other events. That's such a special part about being at the Olympics, is being able to support the rest of Team USA, and it made it just a little bit tougher to do that. And so that was something we missed out this time versus in 2018. But at least we had the first experience, so at least we had one.
So hold up those medals. So who here has held an Olympic gold, silver, bronze medal? These are gold and silver. Anyone? Okay, a couple of people. Don't be shy. It's a cool thing. All right, so what we're going to do, please be gentle with them. We're going to pass these around so you can get a chance.
Lock the back doors quick.
Yeah.
And don't mix up whose is whose.
If you see us running, it's because one of you guys stole one.
So you talked about how it was different. It was a different kind of energy from your previous Olympics in Korea, just because, how did you like build up to that? Talk about like, you talked a little bit about like, it's just a hockey game, but say a little bit more like, what was the mental work to get ready for, I mean, I know a lot of people, speak for myself, like I don't even love traveling that much with COVID, right? And you guys were like next level pressure. Like how did you get into the zone on that? Say a little bit more about that and sort of some of the lessons that you brought to that.
Yeah, we're lucky to be with our team since October in the fall. And usually that's a great time for us to all be together. It doesn't happen often where we're with each other for an extended period of time. So the growth opportunity as a team is really big. It just makes it really hard when you're kind of limiting your interactions off the ice, which is where great teams are made, really, is those off-ice interactions. We had to rely on a lot of the history we've shared. We were lucky to have a good veteran group. I think about over half our team was on the 2018 team. So you kind of have to fall back on that. It just made it really hard to cultivate that off the ice, and especially as we got closer to the Olympics. So come January, we were pretty locked down, and it just heightens the stress, and it just makes it kind of, you're stuck in this bubble where you can't get out of it. All you're doing is focusing on hockey, and I think anyone can attest to it. The more you focus on something, the harder it is to, kind of find your stress release from that.
Yeah, I think a big thing is obviously in every industry is those relationships you form. And I think it was really important we formed those relationships and made them stronger from about October to December. And then we actually had some COVID issues in January, and a couple of our teammates got it. And so we were having practices where, like, there was one day where I was on the ice as a goalie by myself, so nobody out there shooting on me. I just had a half an hour to do my own thing, and then I'd get off the ice and somebody else would come on because we were trying to limit the spread. And at that point, you're kind of looking around at your teammates, and one of my teammates and I were talking one day, and we felt like we got to get a lot off our chest and like felt better. We started kind of doing that with other teammates, and one of them goes, "Yeah, I've really discovered that the way home from the rink right now is a really good time to cry." Like, that's where we were at stress-wise, and I think we realized once we started kind of like getting that out and in the open with each other, again, made those connections stronger going into February, which was important come competition time.
I want to talk about teammate relationships, coaches, mentor, but first just staying with this idea of like how you're able to manage it. What are things when you think back on your schooling and teachers and so forth, what are things that schools did that were positive that helped prepare you for a situation like that? And what are things that you, in retrospect, wish schools had done?
I think the biggest thing for me is just the collaboration piece of it. I never felt like going through, whether it's high school or college or even younger, which is harder to remember, but especially high school and college, everything was kind of collaborative, especially with my teachers and even classmates and teammates. And like Nicole said, when you realize that everyone's kind of in the same position, regardless of if you're the student or the teacher, you're all fighting for the same goal. And I think relying on each other, it's the hardest thing to do, I think, is to say either A, I need help, or I'm struggling with something, or I feel like I'm the only one doing this, but in reality, no one's the only one doing anything. Or feeling anything. So I think that's just the biggest piece of it, is kind of relying on other people.
Yeah, I think when I was younger, I remember in third grade, one of my teachers really loved to like listen to all of our stories. And so I'd come home from the weekend, or I'd go back to school after the weekend, and I guess I like to brag, because like I just remember going up to him and being like, we won our hockey game, like whatever, 3-0 or something this weekend. And she made me feel like it was important to her. And so that was where, I felt like not only my success in the classroom mattered to her, but, my success in other areas. And then getting older, I think the communication piece was huge in high school. I had to travel and probably miss 6 to 7 days of school a month for hockey. And so that communication and being able to, look at my teacher and be like, I'm going to be gone Thursday and Friday. I know I need to get this test done. I can do it before I leave or whenever I get back. But really opening the doors to communication was huge as I got older.
Do you think you learned more about like how to manage those situations and manage stress in school because you had to have those conversations and do those things? Or did you learn more about that sort of on the ice or in things associated with sport?
Yeah, I think both. I mean, my parents obviously made it pretty clear early on that if the grades weren't there, then I wasn't going to be able to miss all this school to go play hockey. So I think it was kind of from all sides. The teachers wanted me to be successful at hockey. Hockey coaches wanted me to be successful in school. Parents wanted me to be successful in both. So it was like just, that whole trifecta, I think, really was what was the most helpful.
Kelly, what about you? It sounds like dominating that other high school took a lot of focus, and so like how did you learn to manage stress, and where did that come from?
This might offend him, but I don't think that game stressed me out too much. I'm sorry to say, but no, I think all of it is just like the time management.
We're not going to be invited back next year, so we'll just get it all done here.
But really, it's like the time management piece, kind of like Nicole is saying, is it's stressful when you look at everything as a whole and you say, this is a lot to do. I have to do my homework for all of my classes, and then I have to go to practice, or I have a practice right after school, and then I have to do homework, and I have another practice, or like whatever it is. It's kind of when you look at it as a whole, it gets really to be a lot, but when you kind of break it down, the on-ice like hockey piece, like at the end of the day, that's supposed to be fun. Like that's kind of like your get to do. And so I think, and I feel like Nicole maybe felt the same way, it's not that school was like, I have to do it, but it was one of those things that like, you have to do it. Like you have to do your homework, you have to, show up, you have to be there, be present. And that was something I think my parents always said, like, if your grades aren't good, like, then you don't get to do this. So I had a professor, or I guess a mentor in college, for all the athletes. He said, do what you have to do so you get to do what you want to do. And that's kind of something that stuck with me, and I think that kind of goes back to that stress piece.
But playing at the level you all play at, like, you have to play hard every day, even if you don't necessarily want. That's the difference between being a professional and an amateur. An amateur, you do it because you want to do it, and when you want to do it. And professional, you got to do it some days, whether you want to do it or not. Like, where did that sort of tenacity and sort of ability just to put in the work every day, regardless of what else was going on, where did that come from?
Probably just kind of born with it. I was probably way too competitive. Like, I was probably the kid that, as a kid, you're like, they're competitive. But it works out, so.
Can confirm, Kelly's competitive.
So I think just that internal, like there's different motivators, I think, for all of us on our team and other teams, obviously, but for me, it's always just been like that competitive piece. And I think it kind of carried over to the school side of things, too.
Yeah, I agree. I think in some situations, like the competitiveness is something maybe you can't necessarily teach. It's just, something that you either, I think the biggest thing for me that I kind of evolved was it's not I'm trying to be better than that goalie or that person or that. It's like, no, I need to improve at this. That's what's going to get me better and get me an opportunity to play at the next level. So I think it's not only that drive to be competitive, but the drive to like get better in like that internal drive every single day makes a big difference.
So in students, you're going to see all kinds of excellence. It can be athletics, it can be academics, it can be music and arts, it can be lots of different things, and sometimes a combination of those. But in your experience, like what should schools be doing to sort of recognize and sort of support sort of that kind of excellence?
I think it's that caring about the entire person. And I think when you show someone that you care not only about their success in the classroom or their sport, but that you care about them as a whole, you know, it makes them want to do that much better in different areas. I think that's something you see a lot of right now in the shift in coaching. Is it used to be like, you know, you don't do this, well, we're going to do suicides the rest of practice, and those coaches aren't around as much anymore. It's things are changing, and I think that's really important and really good for the types of athletes and the kids we have coming up today. Is it's not a, you know, my way or the highway. It's let's work together to make this work.
Yeah, and I think everyone on our team is different and is motivated differently, likes to be communicated with a little bit differently, can be pushed in different ways. So some people might need that direct call up being, hey, like it's just not good enough right now. You have to, you know, be better at this or do this differently or focus a little more, whatever it is. And some people might just need like that head nod, be like, yep, you know, I know, let's do it. So it's kind of like Nicole's saying, just finding those ways to support the whole person. And I mean, we don't like to just be defined as hockey players. And I think that goes for anyone doing whatever, if they're a violinist or they like to do theater or whatever it is. But I always remembered like the teachers that, you know, came to our soccer games or whatever. And that was a great part about my high school was all the teachers were supporting everything, whether it was sports or those other extracurriculars.
Talk about that. I want to come back to the sort of getting feedback and that sort of thing. But let's stay on with the teachers. When you think about sort of standout teachers, like you shared, okay, they came, they supported you sort of across the things that were happening at school. What else? Like when you look back, what are things that like you really think of, you know, a person and what he or she did that was particularly powerful for you?
I feel like for me, it was kind of just treat me like a person instead of like treat me like a high school kid. I actually am lucky to coach now at the high school that I went to. So seeing these teachers that like now we're not, like I still don't think we're the same level, but like they see us more as like, oh, we're all on the same level of staff here. But it's cool because it doesn't ever feel like anything's changed in our relationship. And I think that's something that it just really brings up that authentic relationship. And it goes from, you know, being a student to now being peers.
Yeah, I think, like I said, when I was younger, having those teachers just sit and listen to whatever goofy stories, I'm sure a lot of you hear a lot of those, and just like, I don't know, it made my day, you know, just to feel like they cared that I won a hockey game or I lost a hockey game that weekend, and it, you know, maybe I didn't do my homework that day, but you still listened to me even though I didn't get what I was supposed to get done. I think things like that just prove how much you care, and I think that those are the type of things that stand out. Like I can remember my third grade teacher ended up coming to the celebration. Like when I got home after 2018, she was at like our house celebration because she just had meant so much to my family and meant so much to me, and she ended up dropping the medal on my toe, and and she was apologizing all over the place, and it turned black and blue, but like, you know, and now it's, it was just like little memories like that obviously had such an effect on me that, you know, 20 years later, she was still a part of my life, so.
Well, they say good teachers leave a mark, so.
That she did.
What about coaches? So the same question, when you think back on, and I'm sure, you know, and you played different sports, but also hockey, a lot of hockey, so you had a lot of different coaches, I'm sure. What do you, like, when you think of ones, you're like, wow, that was amazing, and you think of ones, you're like, you know, I could have skipped that experience? Like, what are some of the things that stand out?
I think they know kind of like how much you can bring. The best coaches I've had at all levels, they don't settle for like, oh, that's good enough, or yep, you got that, great, or like, we're just gonna not do that because you're not good at it, or as a team and as an individual. And the best coaches, I feel like, were the ones that always we're pushing to be better. Like Nicole said earlier, it's about being better yourself. So whether individually or as a team, like how can we continue to improve and kind of keep raising what our standard is, our expectations are. And I think, all of the coaches, I've been lucky enough to be on some pretty successful teams. And at the end of the day, all the really good coaches, when it comes to the game time, they step back and they let you do your thing because it's about the preparation piece, not about, overly doing all the X's and O's in game.
Yeah, I agree with that, they give you everything they can give you through that practice time and then trust you enough to go do your thing when it's time to play. And I think for me too, a big thing, one of my high school coaches was, when like Kelly kind of referenced, when they see something in you that maybe you don't see in yourself and they kind of push on you, maybe a little bit of tough love to pull that out of you. I think that's really important, and it goes with the communication piece, like knowing which buttons to press to get the most out of you individually.
How does and this is a topic, there's a lot of conversation about gender now, and we're coming up on 50 years of Title IX. It's not by coincidence we have you guys. We don't have a bunch of dudes up here, which is great. And it's an enormous, this would not have been happening in education conference not that long ago, and especially when Title IX was passed. So talk about gender. It's interesting, like USA Hockey has a whole separate coaching thing on coaching girls, there's a whole unit for that. Like, what do you guys think about, like, how does gender play in here? How should we think about it? Do boys and girls need different things in terms of coaching and feedback? Like, there's a lot there, but like, in your experience, how do you all think about that as coaches now and as players?
I have heard that girls are far more coachable. Almost too coachable in the sense that, like, if you tell, and I coach high school girls, so if you say, hey, go skate there and wait for the pass, they will literally go skate there and wait for the pass, and the pass is not coming. So it's kind of like this balance of like coaching girls and having conversations with other coaches that have coached both. They're like, whoa, like it's awesome because they like are attentive when I'm talking and they do what I say, and I'm like, yep, but you have to be careful because you'll get to the game and they will do exactly what you say, even though it's a free-flowing game and you have to read the situation. So that's like the biggest difference, I think, is there are different needs, just because, boys, you put a puck in front of them and they're all just like puck, and you're like trying to get them to like listen more, and girls, you're actually like, let's tone this, like bring this back, and let's like maybe react a little more to the situation. That's true, I'm being serious. They're like a dog with a ball. See ball, get ball.
Too long. If you weren't paying attention, the short version of that, if you were to look at your phone, is boys are meatheads. So, Nicole, what would you like to add to that?
I guess the biggest difference I've seen coaching-wise with girls versus boys is I've done a lot of coaching under 6 and under 8, and having coaches that go back and forth from the girls to the boys. I had one coach that he'd coached his son, came over to his girls' practice, and in hockey, to make things easier sometimes, they'll get out a ring. So you kind of put your stick in the middle of the ring and then the puck doesn't go off of it. And it's a great tool you can use with kids. We happen to not be using that tool with the girls that day, and they're 6 years old. Pucks are flying everywhere. It's not the most successful drill, but like that's the point. That's how we're gonna learn. And I had a dad come up to me and say, they're really struggling with this drill. Like, I think we need to make it easier. I think we need to get the rings out. And I looked at him and said, did you do that with your son this morning? And he said, no. And I was like, yeah, it's okay. And then he came back to me later and he kind of said, you're right. Like, I push my son and I allow him to fail and learn, and I'm not doing that with my daughter. I'm coddling her. And I'm not saying it's like that in every situation, but that was something that I noticed right off the bat was like, yeah, we're gonna let him screw up, we're gonna let him fail, we're gonna let him chase the pucks all over the place because that's fun anyway. But that was a big thing for me to see right off the bat.
And I would add to that too. I think girls, from what I've seen, are scared to make mistakes. So going off that too, getting this environment where it's like, yeah, fail. Like that's how we all got better, was you get on the ice and you fall and then you get back up and keep doing it. And boys, I think they're like, I'm gonna go make all the mistakes because I don't care, because I'm just gonna chase the puck again. So it just goes to that, where giving especially young girls this area, this avenue to, fail and show that it's okay and it's very normal and healthy, and that's what actually is going to make you better.
So talk about that, like, and we're going to come back to the relationship piece, but talk about this structurally. I mean, we know, like, in a lot of places around the country, girls' sports still are second class to boys' sports. You see that in hockey in a bunch of different ways. Your team has been outspoken on that, on gender equity and pay parity and all of these issues. So talk about sort of how you see things changing, what needs to change, and what schools can do so that we're raising people who see the world as it should be around this, not necessarily as it is or as it was.
Yeah, I think, our whole mission, one of our biggest missions as our team and program is to leave the game better than you found it. And so much of what we do is to benefit all the young girls coming up. So hopefully when they, get to college, there's a great league for them to play in and continue playing hockey. I think too many times, people end their hockey career or their whatever sport there is career too early because there's just nowhere else to go. And I think from a high school level, even just like looking at the way, like, okay, do I just basic money? Like, do I put as much money into the men's hockey team as the girls' hockey team? Do I put the same money into softball as baseball? Like, how do I support them? Like, are we, do we just kind of give whatever coach to them and say, figure it out even though they've never coached the sport? Or are we getting really good quality coaches in to help them? Like, I think that's something that it only perpetuates itself. So for us, that's something that we fight for a lot, is saying, if you put more into us, we will give you tenfold of that. And it's just kind of surrounding, I guess, ourselves, trying to always surround ourselves with people that agree with that. And I think that's the hardest thing, is just trying to convince people that, yeah, like we can do it. If you help us, we can do it.
Yeah, and I think so much of it is in conversations, treating women's, girls' sports the same as men's, boys' sports. Like, do we ask the female basketball player in our class about the NBA games that were on last night, or do we ask about the WNBA games that were on last night? I think I think almost normalizing talking about female sports and female accomplishments in general. I think the more of that you do, it seems like, when something isn't happening and then it happens a lot, it's like feels forced, but it's like, no, that's why we're trying to make this change, is to make it normal, because it's like this right now. So if I talk about it more, it's just evening out, those kind of conversations. And I think lifting up athletes and people that are trying to do more for female sports or just female activities in general is huge too. I think for our team right now, we're part of the Professional Women's Hockey Players Association. I don't even know if I got that right. It's a tough acronym. It's a tough one, but and our whole goal is to create a long-lasting, sustaining league that'll be here in those 10 years plus for, girls that are in high school right now to dream about playing in. And I think just the awareness and the desire to look up and know, and again, treat those students as a whole person and asking about those things outside of class.
That's awesome. So let's talk about relationships. You mentioned, we talked about coaches. How did you all learn to build those relationships? And in sports, it's a high feedback environment. Performance is very transparent. Where you are on the depth chart, or where the lines are, all this stuff is very out there. How did you all learn that? To do those things and build those kinds of relationships to where you can have the honest conversation like the one you shared in Beijing, where somebody's like, yeah, I'm breaking down and crying, and that takes an amount of trust to be able to have a conversation like that. How did you learn those things? Because a big part of what BAR does and what we do is about thinking about relationships. So where did that come from, and what are some of the lessons?
I think some of it was pushed by my parents a little bit, in terms of, if I wasn't playing as much as I wanted to in high school, it was, well, go find out why, because I'm not going to do it for you, or, if you want to fix this, go do it. And I think that, again, is like, it's okay to be in situations and get it wrong and fail, go in, hey, why aren't I playing? What am I doing wrong? And they tell you, and you maybe screw up, have a little comeback about that, and that's okay, because you learned, oh, that's not how I'm going to handle this the next time I go ask. So I think, again, for the people that are in charge, the coaches, the teachers, to understand that, that's a learning opportunity, and give that chance for growth if kids are speaking up and trying, like that's obviously a good first step, and it's just, continuing to build on that and learning for yourself
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me too, like my parents were always like, you have to be nice to everyone, first and foremost. Like don't be an a-hole. Be nice, be kind. Like you can't be mean to someone if they don't play or if they don't do this or that. Like if you play more than them, like everyone's the same. Like it reminds me of my mom always wanted to invite like my entire third grade class to my birthday party because she didn't want anyone to feel left out. And it's just kind of bringing that along the entire way and I remember in college especially, it was really like harped on that player on the first line is just as important as the player that's sitting in the stands and as a healthy scratch that day. And even on our Olympic team, it's the same thing where you really do need everyone because the people that aren't playing as much maybe in the games, they're there in practice and they're helping you prepare for the games. So just kind of remembering that. And then obviously in college, like you're around your team so much where you just go through everything together, the good, the bad, on the ice, off the ice. And you realize like that's what matters. And when alumni come back, they're always like, it goes fast. So enjoy the time with your teammates because they're going to be your college teammates for life type of thing.
So if I'm hearing that right, you're essentially saying in so many words that culture and relationship building are kind of, that you can't decouple the two, and that if you have a good culture, you're going to get those relationships, and if you don't have that kind of culture, you're not. Is that?
Yeah, I definitely think so. When I first got to the national team, it kind of felt like there was this older group of veterans, and it almost was, they did almost too good a job making sure that you felt included, you felt like you were important there, and it was like they were always asking you how you were doing. They always wanted to ask you if you needed anything and things like that, and that was something that was actually a culture shift from when they were new to the program. It was very much like, you're new, you haven't earned your spot here yet, don't you dare get in the front of the line to eat. And that was something that, it's a true story. That was something that they didn't like, and that they knew in order to win and to be a really good team, like we needed to shift that culture to where everyone, like Kelly said, feels valued. So then when I came in, it was complete opposite. It was like people asking you to go for coffee, people asking you, about your day. They want to know about your families and all this stuff to make sure that you felt welcomed and included. And that was before I'd even made a team, and I think that was big part of our program. There's we're going to have a camp in August. There's going to be 76 people there. And the national team only has 23 spots, but by the end of it, everyone's going to feel like they're part of the women's national team. They're helping our program get better as a whole and helping us work towards winning more gold medals. Yeah, I just go off of that. I think the best teams have the healthy competition where you're always pushing each other, but understanding at the end of the day, you're all on the same team. And it's like going back to that stress piece of it, that's one of the most stressful parts of it is that you're fighting for your spot. And it goes back to even what Nicole said earlier about being better yourself. You have to really have that understanding that me being my best does not prevent someone else from being their best. And really, we might be competing for the same spot, but we're not competing against each other because we're two totally different people and two totally different players. And I think when people can really buy into that feeling of it, and so you're not actually competing against each other, you're just trying to raise the entire level, that's where you have success. And I mean, going back to that story now, how it goes is back of the bus gets first half for meals, and then the next day the front of the half gets the first front of line for meals. So that's just compromising, and there's still some of that healthy status, longevity period to it. But yeah, I mean, it's just, again, understanding that eventually for us, when we go to this camp in August, there will be people there that eventually will take my spot on the team, and it's kind of understanding that that's a healthy piece to it.
So, I mean, there's so many metaphors from sports to schools and what schools done. You've given a bunch. I want to pick on you just a little bit, Nicole. You're a goalie.
Classic pick on the goalie.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
that's where
weird.
I'm going. Talk about the relationship thing. From one of the things you notice when you watch hockey teams work out often is you've got the position players are off doing their thing and the goalies are off doing goalie stuff. Not all the time, but you see that a fair amount. And the goalies can be a little, and you hear this, you hear the soccer goalies complain about this too. They're kind of isolated from the team sometimes. Talk about that in the context of, so the person who is absolutely integral, I mean, the goalie is obviously instrumental to the team's success, but is sometimes off a little bit. I don't want to torture the school metaphor, so just talk about it from the hockey. What are things that are sort of successful there in sort of building that kind of inclusion, and what are things that are not?
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, for a goalie, we have our own like goalie practices, very specific goalie coaches.
High maintenance.
Do you want us to be good or not? Like, I mean, like, do you want to win? Kelly is one of the people that comes out and shoots on the goalies at all of our goalie practices. We're very thankful for her. Thank you for all you do. But so it is a little bit of a different world because you've got the head coach. Usually, what was my experience, that was kind of like, I don't know what to do with you necessarily because we're going to be doing these drills and like, I don't need a goalie for that drill, so you can go do your own thing. And it was kind of interesting growing up, like the good teams and the good coaches made sure that the assistant coach had drills for me to do specific to goaltending while team was doing their specific stuff. So it was like, while I was secluded, it wasn't like you're gonna go stand over there, kick rocks. It was like, we have some things that are gonna help you structurally get better while we're working on these things. So I think that just pre-preparation was a big part of it, and at the same time, like, you know, treating your fellow teammates really well so they will come help you at your skates is very important. And then at the same time, I think as I've gotten older and played on more high-level teams, it's while maybe the head coach doesn't understand the goaltenders as well, they make every effort to make sure that it's like, hey, did you get enough shots today? What other scenarios do you need to see like this week? Or what do you need to feel comfortable before we go into our game on Friday or Saturday or whatever? So I think it goes back to that communication piece, coming prepared to those practices if the goalie's not going to be involved, and then listening to the goalie when their heart rate is through the roof because you've done a drill that has 5 shots back to back to back to back. So I think, it just goes back to that communication piece.
We're coming up on time, but I want to allow, do we have time for one audience question? Okay, so there's a mic around. If you've got one, I mean, this is a pretty, if I have this right, there's 65,000 girls playing hockey right now. Is that right? I think USA Hockey. And so you've got I know you guys were promised there'd be no math, but this is 10% of the top 20 of them, of that 65,000 in the United States. So it's a pretty rare opportunity. So if there's one question you're just like, I really want to ask. I've got my lightning round question. Don't be shy, no? All right. Andy Plattner wants to ask for help on his...
there's someone over there.
Okay, there we go, good. Plattner wants help on his slap shot, but you're going to have to do that on your own time.
What advice do you have for a young hockey mom of a young hockey player? Yeah, girl.
Great question.
That's a good one.
I think, like, from my parents' perspective, one thing that they always did a great job of was just ask me if I had fun. Partially because, especially when I was younger, my mom, like, had to learn about hockey. She never played it. My dad, who was more involved with my hockey career from, like, a coaching perspective, he understood from a young age that, like, I knew if I messed up or if I did bad, and if I wanted to talk about it, he would be there. Otherwise, again, just be, did you have fun? Like, how was it? What'd you learn? Just encouraging them to, again, start the conversations or be okay messing up. Because hockey, I don't know, maybe more so than most sports, like, you mess up all the time. It's impossible to go one, shift on the ice without messing up. So they always, just from a young age, emphasize, like, did you have fun? Did you enjoy it? How's it going from that perspective?
I think the advice my parents would give to a young hockey mom is not to let their child play goalie. And second would be, I hope you're ready for the 6 a.m. practices.
All right, I hope you're not a goalie mom. Okay, so last question. You got a room full of 700 educators here, just fabulous teachers who, as people have said all day, have been took time out to be here, to be part of this. Like, what's your advice? What's your parting lightning round? What's your parting words of advice, wisdom, encouragement?
Yeah, I don't think that there's really much advice needed. I mean, you guys are obviously here because you care about your students and you care about your schools. So I think just, like, ride that passion. That's something that we like to do, is follow our passion. And I think, that's the greatest gift, I think, is when you find something that you love doing and it just helps you do a great job.
Yeah, I think I would just say thank you. Like I kind of mentioned earlier, I had some amazing teachers growing up, and I would definitely not be where I am today without them. So I would just say thank you for all of you do and the impact you have on the next generation.
All right, Kelly Panic and Nicole Hensley, thank you very much.